Honor is a serious social problem in some countries and in some ethnicities, and it has surprisingly gone on for far too long. Yet, many are yet to, adequately understand what this is all about because it hasn't really been adequately explained by the people who partake in this act, except for the mere flimsy excuse of cleansing a family or reinstalling the honor of the family. Is it enough to say that this barbaric and crude act is a form of, informal social control? How about viewing it as a dark side of modernity in which the systematic marginalization and stigmatization of minorities and social groups have led people to rely more on traditional honor codes as a kind of, informal social control? This thing called honor is particularly harmful and disturbing. It's really very, very disturbing form of control over someone's behavior. So according to report, it has been taking place for thousands and thousands of years, and it continues to be practiced globally, particularly but not exclusively amongst communities in or from Southeast Asian as well as Middle Eastern and Mediterranean countries. Throughout history, women have been held responsible for upholding the honor of their families. Failure to do so often will lead to, deadly consequences. But even though thousands of women have lost their lives in the name of honor, over time, men too have been cut down for dishonoring their families. A typical example of this is the dismemberment of Babak Khorramdin by his own parents in Iran. His only crime that made them think that he no longer deserved to be alive was being a bachelor. Before we get into this case, please take a pause and click on that subscribe button. Give this video a thumbs up and turn on your notifications. Then we can go over to Iran to look into the case of Babak Khorramdin. Babak Khorramdin was a 47-year-old film director who graduated from the Faculty of Fine Arts at the University of Tehran in 2009 with a master's degree in cinema. Just a year after his education, he moved to London in 2010 to continue his film studies. He later became an assistant professor before deciding to, return back to Iran to teach students filmmaking. So Babak was a very successful, film director. His credits include a number of short films that he made in London. This includes Crevice and I think Old of Your Shah, which tells the fictional story of a Turkish man's experience of moving to London to study and then missing his family back home and then deciding to return to his aging mother. Perhaps this was his own way of telling his own story, as this is what will become what will be remembered for, because the movie seemed to, obviously mirror his life as a student living away in London, far away from his family in Iran. He did say during the screening of this movie that it was inspired by his personal experiences. So Babak was born on the 23rd of September 1974 in Tehran, Iran. His parents were Akbar Khorramdin and Iran Musavi Sani. Up until the time they put him into pieces and dismissed him, everyone actually considered them a loving family, In the morning of Sunday, May the 16th, 2021, the severed and mutilated body parts of Babak Khorramdin was found by sanitation workers in the city of Ekbatan. Ekbatan, I think, is a suburb near phase 3 of a planned neighborhood in a well-known housing complex at the west of Tehran, the country's capital, that's Iran's capital. His body parts were found in garbage bags and suitcases. It was just an, ordinary day, and these sanitation workers were going about their businesses, collecting trash, when one of them made this grisly discovery. The body parts were found stuffed in suitcases and dustbins on Nafisi Street. The police were immediately notified, and they arrived pretty quickly when they got this notification. It wasn't even difficult at first for them to identify the body parts. Babak Khorramdin was well known in the community as a famous movie director. and his family lived nearby. So the police immediately, went home to where his parents stayed. That's his parents, Akbar and Iran. When the police arrived, their intentions at first was to, deliver the sad news to his parents and question them about, his last movement. But soon enough, they find out that Babak's parents might have been, responsible for the way he had been found, because as soon as the police began to talk to them about the body parts of their son that had been found in the trash, the parents readily confessed that they were in fact responsible. They said they had actually murdered Babak. Immediately, Tehran's police station 135 ordered a search of the family's home. In the meantime, forensics had positively identified Babak by his fingerprints, so there was no doubt at this point that this was really Babak in the suitcases. When a search was conducted at Babak's parents' house, the evidence that they discovered there clearly pointed to the act of suicide. The story was that he was dismembered following an argument between him and his father, who was angry that his son wasn't married at the age of 47. His parents were not happy with him per se. Him being single was something that they were ashamed of. He was single at the age of 47 and living with them. Babak was also said to be bringing home the woman he was having affairs with into his parents' home, and they didn't like it at all. They asked him to move out and get married, but he refused. On the day of the incident, he and his father got into this huge argument concerning his wayward bachelor lifestyle, something that led his parents to just get rid of him for damaging their honor, basically. As investigations began into what exactly had happened to Babak, the police requested for the CCTV footage of the apartment building that Babak and his parents lived in, and what they saw on the elevator cameras only solidified their suspicions that the parents had done something to Babak, and even they were not even prepared for what the surveillance footage revealed. So that was the CCTV footage of Babak's parents moving his body parts in large plastic bags and carry-on suitcases out of the apartment down to the streets where they dumped him in the trash. It's, very, very cringy to see how calm the mother and the father were as they were, moving the bags like it was just trash. It was just garbage. It's hard to believe that that was their own son they were moving in bits and pieces to dispose of in the trash like that. Babak's 74-year-old mother was actually holding the elevator as we saw. She was holding it open for her husband Akbar, while the 84-year-old Akbar was making the trips to go bring the bags and suitcases into the elevator. See, this old man was just nonchalantly moving his deceased son's body casually like it was something that he did every day. At a point, he even glanced at his reflection and adjusted his cap like It was nothing serious. If you were to be in Nigeria, they will say that the man chop liver. That's what they'll say basically. The man get liver. If you think the video is shocking enough, what Akbar and Iran, Babak's parents, reviewed in court during their arraignment is one of the most chilling details I have ever heard about any case in recent times. So, after the discovery of the footage, it was established pretty quickly that Babak had been in an honor killing and his parents were both arrested for the crime. Babak Khorramdin's old Iraq war veteran father Akbar told the Tehran criminal court that he is in fact happy to have his son. He said, quote, "I am relieved. I have no worries in my life," end quote. They thought that this had happened to Babak just because he wouldn't get married. It seemed to be too flimsy an excuse, for what was done to him. So the court wanted to know the true motive of why Akbar and Iran had committed this crime in the first place. Akbar, Babak's father, justified the by saying that since the CV cases grew, I'm hoping you understand what I mean by CV because I can't call it out according to YouTube terms. So he said that since the cases grew and physical classes turned to online classes, Babak had taken his female students home 3 days in a week under the pretext of giving them private lessons. His parents found it to be, odd and utterly disgusting that Babak only brought female students home. If he wasn't doing anything with them, why then was he not bringing home the male students as well? According to Akbar, they were not even sure the women Babak came home with were even real students like he claimed they would. Akbar revealed that Babak was also constantly harassing him and his mother, even though they had particularly raised him in real difficulty. I don't know what they mean by that. I don't know if Babak himself was, a tough child growing up, raising him was difficult. I don't know, but he said that they had raised him in difficulty. So according to Akbar, Babak would bring home his female guests and then ask his own mother to prepare meals for them, and that act was very disrespectful and demeaning. On that particular day of the crime, he again had asked his mother, that Babak has asked his mother to cook for him while he retired to his room with his guests, whom he had, brought home and they believe he was sleeping with at the time. At that point, Akbar was very, very angry. He told Babak to leave his house and get his own place so that he could continue his wayward life at 47. But Babak blatantly refused. Babak, in fact, told his father Akbar categorically that only his corpse would leave the house. He wasn't even thinking that his parents could actually make him leave the house, even if it's in pieces. When he made that statement, that didn't cross his mind at all. It didn't cross his mind. Akbar explained further how Babak not only harassed them, but he also was, abusing them physically. He said, quote, "My son was single and was freeloading and harassing us. Our lives was at stake because he would beat us. We were not safe for a day. He cursed at us and did whatever he wanted. His mother and I decided we should get rid of him so that we will no longer lose our reputation anymore. On May the 14th, I went to Babak to do some exercise in Ekbatan. I told him again that I would sell my car and give him his share so that I could rent a house for him. Babak reiterated that he would not go anywhere. I warned Babak that he was either going to leave or that I knew someone whom I would give 10 million tomans to have him killed. Babak smiled and said, "Don't be a fool. Don't be silly. I am Babak. Nobody can do anything." When I got home, I told my wife that Babak would not agree to leave the house. So we agreed to him. End quote. This man was basically describing why and how he cut his own son into pieces for refusing to leave his house and to get his own place. It's not exactly clear why Babak insisted on staying at his parents at all costs when they clearly didn't want him anywhere around. His father threatened to place a hit on him to his face and he laughed it off. He underestimated his own father actually. He never believed his parents could do him any harm. But unknown to him, his parents considered him, horrible and, terrible to cope with. From the allegations of beating them and ordering his mother around to cook for him and him sleeping with a supposed student, he was, considered a disgrace and a thorn in their flesh. Babak telling his parents only his corpse will leave their house was the last straw. If that was how he wanted it to be, so be it. As a corpse, they will make him leave. So Akbar narrated how Babak's food was laced with, loads of sleeping pills by his mother that day. But Babak didn't get to eat it. They had to keep the food for him, until the next morning when he woke up to eat it. So when the substance kicked in and Babak was unconscious, Akbar then restrained him by tying his legs together. Then he tied him to a chair with laces from, I think they said it was from a pair of boots. I don't exactly know whose boots it was, but he removed the laces from a pair of boots and tied Babak's legs with it. Then he put a plastic bag over his head. Then he grabs a sharp kitchen utensil and then his son over and over again while he was weak and semi-conscious till he breathed his last. So after the deed was done, they were now saddled with the task of taking the body out of the house, but there was no way they would have been able to move a full-grown, human being, a full-bodied human being as Babak out of the apartment building without being noticed. So they decided to move his body to the bathroom and put him in the bathtub and into pieces with a kitchen utensil and a machete. Then they packed up the pieces into different trash bags and stuffed some in suitcases, which they now conveyed to the streets via the building elevator and deposited them in 3 different trash bins around the town. In court, everyone was attentively listening to this 80-something-years-old man narrate how he had, committed this gruesome crime against his own son without any iota or hint of remorse. At the end of his testimony at the Tehran's criminal court, Babak Khorramdin even raised his hand to the sky and thanked God for the fact that he had been able to raise his son successfully. When news of what had happened to Babak broke, his film-making buddies were, stunned. They were shocked that this had happened to him. His colleagues, his friends, and even his ex-students took to social media to express their horror at what Akbar and Iran had done to him. People who knew him said that the only reason he even moved back from London to Iran in the first place was because he missed his family and wanted to be close to them. But that same family decided to cut his life short because he was adamant on not leaving the house he shared with them. Now, following Babak's case, more alarming revelations about the Khorramdin's family began to emerge. The true story of the whereabouts of the other members of the family were now being questioned. Up until that time, no one had really paid attention, no one paid close attention to the Khorramdins and what was going on in their household. But as it turns out, this wasn't the first time that Akbar and Iran had family member, because they thought that the family member was bringing them shame and dishonor. So while Babak was in London in 2011, his sister's husband, his name was Faramas, had disappeared into thin air. What everyone was told at the time was that he was, very, very abusive towards his wife, and rumors were that he was also dealing illegal substances, and he had even in the process gotten his wife, Babak's sister, addicted to this hard stuff. And then back in 2018, Babak's sister, Arezo, went missing. She just disappeared as well. But she wasn't reported missing because her parents, that's Akbar and Iran, were telling everyone that asked that she had relocated to Turkey and that she was now residing abroad. But when the incident with Babak happened and authorities began to dig deeper into the family, they discovered that Faramas and Arezo had never been heard from since 2011 and 2018 respectively. When they questioned Akbar and Iran about their daughter and son-in-law, they said that they had them. They actually just agreed, they confessed that they had too. Because basically, according to them, they disapproved of their lifestyle. They said that the reason for son-in-law was because he was abusive towards them and to their daughter, and he dealt in illegal substances. And as for their daughter, they said that she became addicted to the stuff her husband sold, and she drank a lot of alcohol and began to bring home her boyfriends after her husband disappeared. It's almost like the same reasons Babak was, bringing home girls. They called their daughter a slut and they took her life for shaming the family. Akbar and Iran did say that the same way they had tied Babak up and put a plastic bag over his head before going at him with something sharp is the very same way that they did Arezo and Faramas too. They put them all in a bathtub and bodies with a machete and a sharp kitchen utensil. Faramar's and Arezo's body were never found. Maybe they cut them up, into pieces like they did Babak and disposed of the body parts in trash cans too. Who knows? Now, what is confusing about all of this is that the description of the personalities of these people that were murdered was actually in clear contrast to what others knew about them. Like, Babak himself was said to be very humble and nice and very respectable. Arizo's co-mates even described her as a super quiet and obedient girl who didn't even have male friends. She in fact didn't keep male company until she got married. So how do they even become these kind of monsters that their parents said they were? Nobody was understanding because the people that they knew just didn't fit this description that their parents were giving. Akbar and Iran had lived in that building for over 40 years. People knew them as pleasant and chatty, and they oftentimes even babysat for their neighbors, yet all of their children basically. How ironic was that? What they were confessing to was just too shocking and too stunning to believe. The fact that Akbar fested up to what he did and said that he did what he did because the children were morally corrupt was even more disturbing. So basically what he is trying to say, what this means is that if you don't live up to their expectations and their standards, if you don't measure up to their standards or what they've set for you, you were not qualified to be in the family. So they basically just so that you don't continue their lineage. Here is Akbar showing the sign of victory as he was arrested. The man said he had no guilty conscience. He said he had no guilt and he was proud of what he did basically. He did say that he had other children whom he would not hesitate to if they become morally corrupt as well. Those are Babak's older siblings, that's Ashin and Azar. In all of this, Babak's mother was just, there supporting her husband. She said that they planned and did all of this together. Her husband suggested it and she agreed and went along with it. She in fact narrates how great her relationship was with her husband and how he doesn't abuse her or do bad things to her. So now that they were arrested, the Sharia law, which Iran's penal code is based on, clearly states that male members of the family who take their children's life were not to be given the capital punishment. The highest time they can get is 10 years maximum. According to the law, if Babak Khorramdin claims his victims were corrupt and that they were Mado al-Dam, I'm hoping I'm pronouncing that well, Mado al-Dam. This basically means that individuals who are not entitled to protection and who Sharia law can be shared without punishment are Mado al-Dam. He could be exempted from having to, pay retribution or even serving any prison time for what he did if the judge is persuaded that the victims were indeed corrupt and Mado al-Dam. I mean, what happens to human rights? Who made him judge and jury over someone's life that you have to even think of taking away someone's life because you feel that the person is corrupt? Now I'm kind of, understanding why there is so much of this happening in Iran. What is 10 years compared to someone's life? Mind you, sometimes they will get just 2 to 3 years or even the possibility of no jail time as I explained earlier. So it's not even guaranteed that 10 years is what they will get if they are convicted of taking the life of a family member. Well, this also means that Akbar could only get a stiffer punishment for the life of the son-in-law that he took if the son-in-law's parents decides that they want Akbar to face retribution or punishment. This is known as qisas in Sharia law. It is possible but not likely that he could face the capital punishment. So it is actually the son-in-law's family alone that will be in that position to ensure this. But listen, this law does not cover the females in the family, and this just means that Iran will probably, face capital punishment for her own contribution to these crimes. Why are the men covered but the female are not? I really do not understand. But now, later on, when Iran and Akbar were separated, Iran changes her story. She now says that Akbar was actually a very violent man who abused her physically, and he was also assaulting their daughter Arezo before her demise. So basically, she just backpedaled. She said she had to cooperate with her husband because she was afraid of him. After 1 year of sitting in jail, Iran was sentenced to just over 3 years in prison. That's like 45 months thereabout. That's for the part that she played in what happened to her son Babak. Ekbatan Khorramdin didn't make it to his sentencing. He had passed away from cancer during the criminal investigation phase. Honor is not something that will stop soon, so long as the culture permits it and people do not get stiffer punishment for it. After Babak's case, there have been more and more of these happenings, especially with the whole lockdown, which saw plenty relatives staying together at their homes for far longer periods of time than they would normally do on a regular basis. There was a revision to the laws as regards June of, I think, 2020, when a young girl called Romina Ashrafi was for running away from home to go stay with her boyfriend. The authorities, when they caught up with Romina, were told by her that she would be harmed if she was returned home, but they didn't listen to her. They returned her back to her family and she was by her father. The law is called Romina's law, if I'm not mistaken, but as you can see, it didn't stop what happened to Babak. All Babak wanted was to make an impact and a difference in filmmaking in Iran, but as it is, he will only be remembered as the victim of one of Iran's most horrific crimes. So that's it for today's case, guys. It will be very rewarding to have you click on that subscription button and give this video a thumbs up. Thank you very much for watching, and know that I really do appreciate your support.